Figure it out.
Hello, this is Adam Koralik from Figured Out Productions. The following video is a video of some kind, and I hope you enjoy it.
Hey guys, it's Adam here, and today we're going to be talking about this. I guess you would call it the Defender 2.0. It's a controller from Retro Fighters. We'll get into it in a second. Before we do that though, if you guys could do me a favor, please like this video. For real, hit the like button. Let's see how that goes. Comment down below. I'm curious what you guys think of this or other things, or how's your life going, etc. Let me know. And subscribe. There's that. You can subscribe and help me out on the channel. I appreciate that. Speaking of which, go to the description. There's a whole bunch of stuff down there. There's Twitter. There's Instagram. There's Facebook. There's Discord. You can follow me on all those. There's also Patreon. I appreciate that support. You can get early access to this video or other videos or whatever else I do. It's all over there. There's a whole bunch of details on that. And I forgot I sell merch. There's a Spreadshirt in there. I sell like shirts and hats and mugs and all sorts of stuff. It's all in there. You can check that out. I appreciate that. Also, I have a new travel channel called Flying and Eating, which is an adventure channel which I go all around the world and give you travel tips, and I show you the adventures I go on and restaurant recommendations and all that sort of stuff. I appreciate the support on those platforms. Thank you very much. Now, and then speaking of support, Retro Fighters. They were cool enough to send me this controller absolutely for free for the purpose of review, so full disclosure on that, and thank you very much to them for that. There will be a link in the description to their website if you want to buy this or any of the other stuff that they've got, as well as, just as a bonus, Castlemania Games. Ryan's an awesome guy. He also sells these. He sells a whole bunch of other stuff. I'll put links to both. Go ahead and support him if you would like to. Now, let's talk about this controller. In order to best do that, I think you need to know a little bit about Retro Fighters themselves. They are a controller company that's been around for a few years, have done videos on a bunch of their stuff. Basically, their model seems to be, hey, a lot of our retro consoles are really cool, but their controllers are very dated. Why don't we make more modern ergonomic controllers for those systems? Now, in this case, that's not the problem they addressed. They basically just kind of gave you a new controller that addressed a few different bug issues, if you will, with the PlayStation 3 OEM controller. But yeah, it wasn't, you know, like, it wasn't the fact that this was like originally a square or something, kind of like, you know, the NES controller. But this is not the first time they've done something with the Defender, hence I've talked about this being the 2.0 version. I guess you would call this the 1.0 version, and that's where that's where I'm not really sure, because neither one of them actually says that. The only difference that's on these boxes is like which systems they're listed for supporting. This one, the one we're talking about today, supports the PlayStation 3, the PC, as well as the PlayStation 4, and we'll talk all about those. This first one, which I'm calling the 1.0, but this is not Retro Fighters' official position, it's just what I'm calling it, the Defender 1.0. This one supports the PlayStation 1 and the PlayStation 2. It has a little dongle specifically for those systems. As a bonus feature, which must be stressed, it was able to work on the PlayStation 3. Now the PS3, we've got three of them right here. The original launch, you know, fat 60 gigabyte model, the slim, the super slim, and then we have two PS4s, the launch and the Pro. The PS3 was capable of supporting via USB ports third-party controllers. I don't know exactly what Sony's logic was, other than being able to advertise that, hey, if you got extra controllers laying around, they'll totally work on the system, which is true with certain limitations. A lot of PC controllers, USB-based controllers, etc. would function, but a lot of the times it would be imperfect for various reasons. This controller basically communicated with this console via that method, and that led to a couple of oddities and imperfections when wanting to use it on a PS3 specifically. One that I pointed out actually in my video at the time was that if you have this launch 60 gigabyte PS3, this is the one that can play PlayStation 2 games like stock. If the hardware's in there, it can play the discs, no problem. If you take this system and launch a PS2 game on it, even if you're using the original controller, what will happen is, once you boot the game, the controller will simply turn off. The system will then prompt you to turn the controller back on. On this controller, that is not a big deal. However, on these, that would not function. It was just a limitation of the way it was done. However, to Retro Fighters' credit, and if you bought this one and did not know this, they did a firmware update for these. The little USB dongle, put it in your PC, update the firmware. It actually fixes that problem specifically. So these actually do work on this now if you want to play PlayStation 2 games. Just a heads up on that. So that had a couple other little issues, but again, PS3, that was a bonus feature. These are really meant for PS1 and PS2. However, if you want to use it with the PS3 or potentially the PS4, that's what this is intended for. So first, we just want to get this out of the way. Yes, it technically works on PC. You just connect it via the USB-C cable that is included with it. Boom, you link it all up, play it on your PC. Cool. PS4, it does work. You connect it the same way. The thing with the PS4, though, is it's the bonus feature this time. While it does function, and you don't have a whole lot of, like, I'm not going to say we had a whole bunch of issues or anything like that, it is worth noting that obviously the touchpad does not exist on this controller, so anything that utilized that on the PS4 will simply not function. But it's basically just some additional value if you bought the controller and want to try and use it on other things. It does technically work on the PS4. But to be completely frank, the value proposition of this controller is that it is designed for these three machines. And it worked perfectly on all three. Instant functionality. So out of the box, you get three things. One, the controller itself, which we'll get back to. You also get a little instruction manual that just has some basic information that says things like, how long's the battery life? 10 hours. What is the punch button on the top of the controller? This is an auto button. It activates the button with turbo functionality without having to hold the button down. What is the screenshot button? This is used only for firmware updating, only if necessary. So if they ever do firmware updates, you connect it to the PC, use that to switch into that mode. It doesn't actually take a screenshot of anything. Just stuff like that, just information on like what each button does, how to connect it, that sort of thing. The only button I found really truly fascinating was actually there's a button on the back. I thought this was a sync button. It is not. This is actually to disable power to the controller. So if it just stays on for any reason, you can just press that to turn it off. But beyond that, like button configuration wise, there's really nothing else exceptional or crazy about it. If you want to sync it to the console, you have to look at the other thing that came with it, which again is the USB-C cable. That's it. It's just these three things. That's all that's in the box. You take it and you sync it up not via the way like every other Retro Fighters controller has worked. I've got spoiled, I guess. I'm just kind of used to Retro Fighters controllers automatically syncing to their wireless device. The controller will send out some sort of broadcast signal and immediately pair. That is not the case with this, and that's probably because this uses Bluetooth as opposed to 2.4 wireless, which the other ones typically use. Because it uses Bluetooth, I don't know the hardware limitation reason for this, it doesn't seem to be able to automatically sync to the system, which is fine. That's not a problem. All you have to do is you connect it once via this controller, or so this cable. You just plug it into the system, plug it into the controller, turn the system on. The controller will sync to it. From that point onward, the controller is always synced to that particular console. And that means that much like the original OEM controller, which is how you had to sync it in the first place, by the way, when you press this button, the power button in the center, it will turn the console on. Yes, we have that feature now, which is great. In that regard, huge improvement. Additionally, it also supports the 6-axis functionality, which I know was a big deal to a lot of people who like the original controller. While there's not a ton of games that use that, it is built in here and works rather well, so that's a very nice little perk. Beyond that, I played it with PS1 games. Worked fine. Played it with PS2 games, as I mentioned before. Worked fine. Played it with PS3 games. Worked fine. I really have, honestly, to be totally frank with you, as far as using it on a PlayStation 3, I really don't have any issues. I actually consider it a huge upgrade over the original controller. And I do so because I'm going to be completely honest in my bias here. I never liked this controller, the PS3 DualShock controller. And before you start yelling at me in the comments, although feel free to, Sony didn't like it either. Do you remember? Are you old enough to remember this? Because this controller is now 17 years old. Yeah, this controller could drive a car if it was a person. Yeah, it's that old. When Sony was introducing the PlayStation 3, it originally was going to come with that boomerang controller prototype. That's what Sony envisioned. But that was one of the earliest internet freakouts ever. People were like, what? And so Sony panicked and just kind of said, no, wireless PS2 controller. Plus, look, it's got this like motion thing. That's pretty much what happened. I always felt that this controller was just kind of unworthy of a next generation system at the time. And I just never really enjoyed it as much. I think that the PS5 DualSense controller is one of the greatest controllers, if not potentially the greatest controller ever made. This really mirrors that in a lot of ways, not only aesthetically, where it's white. Although, to be fair, I actually don't like the fact that it's white, because I think that's like the biggest specific issue I'm going to have with this one, is that it's going to get dirty fast. Like, when you play with controllers, you might notice some dust and grime gets caught in the edges. What that actually is on the thumbsticks and on the sides, that's your skin. Yeah. Well, on white controllers in particular, that gets kind of gross quickly. So I would not have picked a white one personally. But it does aesthetically look like a PS5 DualSense controller. Obviously the triggers are very, very similar to that. Those were very nice, by the way. They also allow it to work in such a way where it's not super sensitive. It just, functions very nicely. Really no complaints in that regard. Like I said, my issue is mostly a cosmetic one. But I think that that's a really nice improvement over the original controller. Battery life's also really good. And like I said, this controller is 17 years old. A lot of them are in bad shape now. A lot were not taken very good care of. So if you wanted a new controller for your system, Sony doesn't make them anymore. This is made. This works well. And it works, very efficiently. As I said, it will, basically remember the last console it was synced to. So if you switch between PS3s, you'd have to sync it up, at least once each time. But after that, it just stays synced to that particular console. With the PS4, like I said, it's a bonus feature. It's not as important, and I didn't really use it with the PC. One thing I actually did try it, though, with... I doubt you guys watched it, but there was a video I did recently on a Philips CDI Bluetooth controller adapter. Yeah, no, I did this. That's a video. That's a thing. You can use Bluetooth controllers on a Philips CDI. I made the video. Watch it. I thought because this was a Bluetooth controller, there was some chance I would be able to get it to work with that. Unfortunately, no, because this one doesn't actually have a broadcasting button, much like I said before. And since you can't connect this cable to that device to pair it, oh well. But yeah, so yeah, that's fine. Beyond that, the only other things I can do is read back of the box here. Like I said, it's Bluetooth, works PS3, PS4, PC, it's wired connection for PC, pressure-sensitive buttons, 6-axis functionality, comfortable and responsive analog sticks, vibration feedback, so yeah, it supports rumble. It works at over 30 feet. It has LED indicators, which is the 4 red lights. No, I screwed up the quote. There are 4 lights. There you go. Jean-Luc Picard. 4 red lights so that you can indicate which player is which. So if you have 4 of these, you know which one's player 1, player 2, player 3, player 4, etc. And of course it comes with the USB-C cable charging, which I'm so glad that we're on full USB-C now. I hate USB micro. Dude, this one's old enough that it's USB mini. Oh yeah. I don't think I mentioned it, but I actually did, out of an abundance of curiosity, try it with the PlayStation 5 since it's obviously made in the image of the PS5 DualSense controller. And fun fact, it doesn't work. Post-production Adam here. So after I had failed to get it to work on the PS5, I was resetting up shots for footage purposes, and I went to turn the controller on, and I guess the last thing I had connected to it was the PS5. So the PS5 suddenly booted up, which was a little confusing. And as you can see in this, it works. I don't know what happened. Initially, it was telling me the device was not supported. Then all of a sudden, it was working, and as you can see, it's working perfectly fine. The system seems to recognize it as a DualShock 4, so that's just an additional bonus, I guess. But yeah, I guess I can say the PS5 does work, but I would think of it as a super-duper bonus feature, nothing more. I would tell you, if you are interested in this, it's because you want to use it on this system. I would not buy it specifically for PS4 functionality or PC functionality or really any others. If you want a new PlayStation 3 controller that frankly is better, that's what this is for. It was great in that regard, and it's good to know it actually is capable of firmware updates. I don't know what else they'll need, but it's always possible that people will think of things that have to go into it. So yeah, that'll pretty much do it. I will put a link in the description if you want to check it out, again, to Retro Fighters directly or to Castlemania Games. Thank you guys very much for watching. Please, again, like the video, comment down below, subscribe if you haven't done that, and then please follow me on all the social media stuff. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Discord. You can also support me on Patreon to get early access to videos and all that sort of stuff, and frankly, keep the channel going. I appreciate that. As well as, like I said, there's a spreadshirt full of merch and stuff like that, and the new travel channel. Appreciate that as well. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all later.